Hello, everyone. My name is Camille Ann Lynch-Griffith, and I am the Administrative Coordinator for FILMCO, also the organizers of the Trinidad and Tobago Film Festival. And today we are going to be speaking with Mr. Jonathan Seecharan, who is exporTT's Grants and Funding Technical Officer. He is responsible for identifying and sourcing external funding that can support and enhance the company's strategic plan. He's also responsible for developing the program financing services of exporTT to Trinidad and Tobago exporters to enhance export competitiveness and gain market access. Words to effect, he's going to give us information on how we can access some funding to create our films. So this info session, which is called Exploring the Grant Fund Facility with exporTT, is starting now, and I am handing you over to Jonathan. Take it away.
Thanks for the introduction. A warm welcome to everyone who is listening. As Lynn said, I am Jonathan Seecharan. I am the technical officer at exporTT. Pleased to be sharing this information.
Hi, you all hear me now?
Yep.
All right, I was just saying, thanks to Camille for the introduction. I am Jonathan Seecharan. I'm the technical officer here at exporTT, and I'm pleased to be sharing this information about the Grant Fund facility with all our viewers today. And without further ado, let's get straight into it. I have a presentation here that I'd like to share with all members. So if you all are ready, we can start. All right. So what is exporTT and what do we do? We are the National Export Facilitation Organization of Trinidad and Tobago. Essentially, what that means is that we are charged with the duty of generating export growth and generating, particularly in the non-energy goods and services sector. And when we talk about the non-energy goods and services sector, we're talking about manufacturing and services. And within services, the creative space is very much a part of that sector. When we talk about the creative space, we're talking about not only film, but also fashion and music. exporTT is one of the trade policy implementing agency of the Ministry of Trade and Industry. So we have a number of services that we provide to companies within that non-energy goods and services sector, of which the film sector is very much a part of that. So we have a wide range of goods and services focused on generating companies' export growth and building their export capacity to generate a lot of exports and a lot of foreign exchange for Trinidad and Tobago. I'd just like to touch a bit on the objective of exporTT. As I said, one of the main objectives is to develop sustainable and diverse export sector, and with the scope of no sector being left behind, whether that be the manufacturing side of thing or the services side of thing, particularly with film, because as we know, we are very, very creative bunch of people here in Trinidad and Tobago. So we want to explore that and develop that as much as we can. So where can exporTT help? How can we assist particularly the filmmakers and the film industry to generate exports and to earn that foreign exchange? Well, exporTT currently has about 6 funding facilities. And across those 6 funding facilities, they really look at assisting in 3 main facets. One would be export market entry activities, one would be innovation, and one would be to increase a company's production capacity. In today's information session, I'd like to give you a bit of information on 2 of our funding facilities with a specific focus on the grant fund facility. The grant fund facility, as you would see, would be very key in helping increase and industries or companies within the film industry's production capacity. Yeah. Just a bit more context, as I said earlier, when we talk about who can benefit from these sorts of grants, we're talking about companies within the non-energy manufacturing and services sector. And I would stress heavily that the creative industry is very much a part of that services sector, that we see that there's a lot of potential to generate foreign exchange and export, particularly exporting our culture through film, particularly. So without wasting any time, let me just dive into the grant fund facility, what it is about, what can it fund, who can it benefit, and what is the overall process of accessing the grant fund facility. Well, the grant fund facility is administered by exporTT Limited, but it falls under the remit of the Ministry of Trade and Industry. It is set up to assist SMEs, small and medium-sized enterprises, in 8 designated sectors. And the focus of the grant fund facility is really on the acquisition of machinery and equipment, because the whole purpose of this fund is ideally to bolster a company's production capacity, production capability. In terms of the specific financing details, the facility provides support in the form, it's a grant, so it's up to 50% of the cost of the acquisition of the machinery or equipment that is needed for the company to bolster its production capacity, to a maximum limit of $250,000 per beneficiary. So in terms of, if you want to maximize that $250,000 grant, you'll need to have equipment purchases of $500,000 or above. Anything less than that, you're looking at 50% of that particular cost. So for example, if the equipment comes up to $100,000, you're looking at 50% funding, which would be $50,000. Yeah. An important note is that the grant fund facility doesn't cover any sort of working capital or installation costs for the machinery. It's just for the pure acquisition of the machinery itself. Now, I would have made mention that the grant fund facility is eligible for companies in 8 areas. One of those areas is the creative industry. Particularly, the grant fund facility speaks to the creative sector in terms of what it can acquire. So it really is for the acquisition of new machinery, equipment, technology, or software for businesses involved in the development or sale of intellectual property of a cultural nature, including film, right? So a film including animation. There's also components for fashion, music, and those other creative sectors. But where this information session is concerned, it is for the development and sale of intellectual property of a cultural nature, particularly film, including animation. So you're looking at either hardware or software purchases, right? Now, that is the overall scope of the grant fund facility. What I'd like to speak to the participants in this information session here about is the actual application process. As I said, exporTT administers the grant fund facility. However, the application, the evaluation process is done via the Ministry of Trade and Industry. So the application is on the Ministry of Trade and Industry's website, because it can also be accessed via exporTT's website as well. It's a downloadable form. You'll need to download the form, complete the form, send in your necessary documents such as your company registration documents, your company financials, the cost for the machinery, equipment, or software. In the case of film, software is included, or various technologies of that sort. Your company financials. Now, company financials for applicants are supposed to be audited However, we do understand that audited financials may pose a challenge. So we have been in discussions with the department from the MTI that deals with the grant fund facility, and we can look at applications with management accounts. Yeah. So once you send those documents to the Ministry of Trade and Industry, particularly the Investments Directorate, that department then will then start to process the application. A site visit will ensue. Post the site visit, an evaluation takes place, and once the evaluation is completed, the applicants will get communication via letter whether the application has been approved or not approved. At the point where the application is approved, that is where exporTT gets involved. We will then draft and execute an agreement between the successful applicant, where the applicant pays 50% of the cost of the machinery, shows their proof of payment, and exporTT makes payable the other 50% based on the approval of the ministry to the company supplier. So it is very important to note that the funding or the 50% support doesn't go to the applying company, but it goes to their supplier. This makes it much easier in terms of payments. Yeah, and it doesn't force the applying company to have to pay the totality of the cost and then look for a reimbursement. So it's paid directly to the supplier. So it lessens the financial burden on the applying company. With the agreement, obviously, it comes with stipulation. So we will do check-ins with the company, the applying company, to see how successful the technology has been implemented. So over the course of a period of about a year to 2 years, we'll always check in with the company every couple of months to ensure that the equipment has been operationalized and ensure that the equipment is functioning as it should, and it is generating the benefits as expected from the purchase of such equipment. Yeah. One point to note as well with the grant fund facility is that at the moment, this is a one-time facility where you access it once. So I would encourage persons in the creative sector, in the film industry, if this is something where you can see yourself benefiting from, as much as possible, you access as much of it as you can. When we talk about film, because of the nature of the film industry as we categorize it, there are many different components of many different companies that make up that film industry. We're not just talking about directors and the actual creative team. We're talking about editors, VFX companies, sound, all these different things. So these different auxiliary components that make up the film industry are well within the remit to apply for the grant fund facility, for the machinery and equipment and software. So this is really the broad scope of the grant fund facility. What I would also like to touch on a bit is one other facility that I think can be accessed by persons in the film industry. From my experience, a few companies within that film series have taken advantage of this other facility. Specific parts of it, I would say, and I will highlight those parts for you. The facility that I'm referring to is our co-financing facility. This is a facility that supports export market entry activities. So it's really that you have a product and you're trying to get into a particular market. The co-financing facility covers specific activities to help you get into that market, right? Now, there are 8 market entry activities that the co-financing covers. However, there are 3 that I think are most relevant to the film industry. The first one has to do with website development or e-commerce platform integration. So you want to have an online presence in some form or fashion, and having a website is definitely a must in this day and age. So if you don't have a website and you're looking to develop a new website, a website that is tailored to what you do, to your specific business activities, to help promote your films, your content. This is something that I think is very important, and we could look at that under the co-financing facility. The other one that I think is very important under the co-financing facility is what we call the trade show participation. Now, as I would have mentioned, exporTT tries to cover a broad range of industries, right? So when we say trade show participation, this may mean something different for manufacturers as opposed to filmmakers like yourself. So participating in film festivals, for example, is something that we would look at under trade show participation for filmmakers or persons within the film industry. So you want to attend a particular film festival there, or you want to go to a networking event to showcase your films and the intellectual property that you have developed. I think this is something that can be looked at under the co-financing facility, and it helps immensely in creating and building a network for your intellectual property and films to be out there and to be exposed to a wider market. The last thing under this particular co-financing facility that I think can be applicable to the film industry, particularly the filmmakers, is the intellectual property registration. Intellectual property is a major component of the film industry. You want to protect your IP. You want to protect your creative ideas. There are many ways to go about this, but protecting the intellectual property in overseas markets where your films will be shown is something that is very important to filmmakers. And that is something that we could look at supporting under the co-financing facility. So I just quickly run through the details of the co-financing facility. This is a facility where you could get, just like the grant fund facility, 50% of the cost of that market entry activity. However, the limits differ based on the size of the company. So for example, small companies can access up to $60,000 per fiscal year. And just for reference, our fiscal year runs from October the 1st of one year into September 30th of the following year. So you can access it multiple times once you don't cross that $60,000 threshold limit, right? So for small companies, it's $60,000 per fiscal year, and this is paid to your supplier. For medium companies, it's $55,000 per fiscal year, but this is reimbursable, meaning that you pay the money upfront, and then you look for the reimbursement. Well, let me phrase it differently. You pay the money after approval has been given by exporTT and a contract has been drafted, and then a reimbursement of 50% will be made to you upon you showing proof of payment. And for large companies, it's $50,000 per fiscal year on a reimbursable basis as well. So I think what I've discussed today, I think the elements of these various grants that are particularly of note to filmmakers and those in the film industry. I think that these are services that at the very least you should have some sort of a contact with us here at exporTT to further develop your interest into it and to see where additional support can be had. So that is just my brief presentation. So I will hand it over back to the team at FILMCO to facilitate any questions anyone may have.
Hello. I'm just gonna, okay, so I do have a question here from Marielle Brown, who happens to be our interim executive director. She's asking, do you only accept applications from limited liability companies? What about sole traders and nonprofits?
So sole traders, limited liability companies, and partnerships are perfectly applicable. What is the last one? Non-profit organizations?
Yeah, sole traders and nonprofits.
So non-profit organizations won't be applicable. However, sole traders are perfectly applicable when registering or when applying.
Also, Mariel also followed up with the question of, if we don't have audited accounts, what do we need to provide instead?
So if you don't have management accounts, if you don't have audited accounts, management accounts would suffice. So management accounts would be your own in-house accounting. That would suffice. Particularly for the co-financing facility. And it slipped my mind to mention, the process for the co-financing facility is more or less the same. However, that is our internal process, the exporTT. So the application comes to us here, the evaluation committee is housed in exporTT, as opposed to the grant fund facility where it is external to MTI. So a major difference with the co-financing management accounts is perfectly acceptable. In the grant fund facility, it is the audited accounts is preferred. However, we understand that audited financials can be across the companies. So at the moment, management accounts would suffice for that unless otherwise asked.
Okay, I'm just checking through with any more questions that are coming through. Let me just check with Soraya just to make sure that we don't have any other questions, because if we don't, sure. Okay, I think you just give he just answered that question. Oh, we have one from Jared Primer. Can special purpose companies also access this funding or support?
That is something. That's a very interesting question. What I would suggest is that for special purpose companies, we'll have to arrange a meeting and have a further discussion on that, because that is a bit of a tricky area. So I would advise that if there's a special purpose company, have a call with us here at exporTT, and then we could work through the finer details of it.
Okay. Rent holder is also saying that you mentioned co-financing covers market entry activities. Does this also cover development of pitch materials of IP?
So where the IP is concerned is only for registering the IP, not the creation of the IP. And the registration of the IP has to be outside of Trinidad and Tobago. So outside of Trinidad and Tobago, if you want to register your intellectual property via WIPO using their Madrid protocol, then that's perfectly fine.
Can I ask, why does it have to be outside of Trinidad and Tobago and not here in Trinidad and Tobago?
So because of exporTT's mandate is to promote exports outside of Trinidad and Tobago, our focus isn't on the local market. So it is more so to protect you outside of the local market. Because our remit is for regionally and extra regional.
Okay. I'm not seeing any other questions from the audience. So if nothing else, is it possible can people contact you directly just to get more information from you? Because I was going to ask you if you could put your information up there, or if it's just to contact exporTT's office and then,
Yeah. What I can do is, so you could contact me at 612-3988 extension 7930. You could also email me at jseecharan@exportt.co.tt. So it's JSEECHARAN at exportt, exportt.co.tt. So a phone call or email, I'll respond as soon as I can, and I'll provide you the information.
Okay, Jonathan, I want to thank you so much for taking the time out to kind of give the information to our audience about what it takes in order to apply for a grant, what the necessary information is that we would need. I'm not seeing any other questions popping up. Okay, so Jared basically said that he would make contact. So you have someone that's going to contact you. And I'm just going to repeat the number, which is 612-3988 extension 7930. Stay tuned to our socials, obviously our Facebook page or even our YouTube page, where we would also put the information again so that we can get in contact with you. I just want to thank you once again on behalf of FILMCO and the rest of the team for taking the time out to give us this information. And we hope to keep. I'm so sorry. I just thought I got another question. Okay, and just to keep in touch with us so that we can continue being able to, if people contact us, we can get information to them.
Yeah,
thank you so much.
No problem. Pleasure.
All right.